Hello, and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore and your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my stalwart companion with me today, Matt Rossi. How are you doing today, Matt?
Oh, I forgot what button to push. Sorry. Hi, I'm okay. It's been a week and week. Yeah, it's been a lot. Yeah.
Well, friends, we are here today, and we're going to be answering questions from you, our wonderful listeners. If you have questions for this or any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in. You can send them into podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. If you are in Discord, you can hit us on the Discord channels we have set aside for you. One is the Q and Podcast Questions channel. It's open for everybody. You can go ahead and just drop those in. Same rules apply. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you can go ahead and hit us up on the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel. That one is mainly set aside for our Patreon subscribers as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on, and we tend to look there first. But let's go ahead and crack on. This one comes from Mehran. So, classic time. In Warcraft Chronicles 3, even small mundane problems in both Elwynn Forest and Durotar are attributed to the machinations of the old gods. Is it possible to infer that the old gods influencing Kalimdor was Cthulhu? But which old god would be whispering in the ears of the kobolds, the Defias, and even the gnolls of Elwynn Forest, stirring these foes to terrorize the forest itself? I mean, any of them could be possibly viable for this, but I have my own thoughts. Matt, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah. There's. I'm trying to figure out how to put this. I'm sorry. I'm having a kind of hard day. Basically, what I thought of when I first read this question was they don't have to be deliberately doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
The old gods can just be around. It's of all things. I want to steal a line from Mass Effect 2 here. A real god, is a verb. It doesn't have to be wanting you to do anything. It can just exist, and you're affected by it. It's like if you fly a spaceship past a black hole, if you get close enough, the black hole is going to warp gravity so intensely that it will pull you in and forget it. If you're around an old god, it warps reality just by being there. People have nightmares just because it's there. And that doesn't just stop. It can be anything. The kobolds can be going nuts because they're getting paranoid and crazy because every time they sleep, there's an old god twisting everything that they see and hear. It doesn't have to be a deliberate thing. As in terms of which old god it could be, it really depends on where you are, but we don't know that they have a limited range just because they seem to affect you more if you're closer to them. Like, to give one example, using Yogg-Saron as an example, he's underneath the entirety of Northrend. Like, there's caves with Saronite in everywhere throughout Northrend. There's that gulch in, I want to say, Howling Fjord. It's on the border between Howling Fjord and Grizzly Hills. That's literally just infested with Saronite and crazy cultists who are like losing their minds trying to mine it. And then if you go all the way over to Ice Crown, obviously, Cthulhu's, there's Saronite all over that place. You go up to the Storm Peaks, his head's there. We can go down and see it. If you go over to the the fjord, not the fjord, the other one, Borean Tundra, is that it?
Borean
Man, I
Tundra,
can't
yep.
remember. You go there's Saronite there. So literally he's everywhere on the entire continent. He is bigger than the continent. There are tendrils of his everywhere. There's no reason to assume that any of the other old gods are any smaller. We know Cthulhu was massive. We just saw like one mouth that led to one of his many, many stomachs. So yeah, there's a lot of potential for, even N'Zoth, who is often described as the least among them, had an enormous presence. I don't think you can assume that you don't have to say, well, it has to be this one because he's in this place. And that also leaves out the fact that some of the old gods are what you'd call dead. Y'Shaarj is dead and yet still affects everybody. To the point where the Shah exists because Y'Shaarj was killed, and yet the heart of Y'Shaarj was still enormously powerful. And there are probably still lots of Y'Shaarj bits all over the freaking place. So yeah, I don't know which one it was, and certainly kobolds act weird on both continents, and every place else we ever run into them. So there's kobolds in Northrend. They're acting crazy. There's kobolds in Goldshire. They're not acting much better. I guess we could argue that any old god influence you run into in the Eastern Kingdoms would almost certainly have to be related to not an old god itself, but one of the Cathraxi who was stuck there. Because there were 2 Cathraxi stuck on that continent. There was Zakajaz, who still sounds like some kind of exotic form of music to me, up north, and then there was Kithix, who was down in the Gurubashi areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know if there was another old god somewhere on the Eastern Kingdoms, although it does seem like there might have been, considering there's at least, another Titan facility. And keep in mind, too, like, Cthulhu's over in Kalimdor, but Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms used to be connected by a giant landmass. So...
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, you touch on something that I've been thinking about with this one since reading the question, which is old gods don't necessarily need to be alive to influence things. And we've seen that time and time again where, like, just bits of their influence left behind have disastrous effects. And there are 2 things that I think are interesting in that regard. One is the fact that old gods have cultists, right? They have those in the Twilight cult that worship the old gods, carry bits of their insanity with them wherever they go. Think of how many places we find, the Twilight's hammer or Twilight cultists, what they carry with them, the artifacts, the symbols, the teachings, the magic, the touch of the void. And they're probably giving off a radiance of some form of, like, I don't want to call it an insanity bubble, but it's probably pretty close to it.
Yeah, I do really think that that's a good way to look at it. The idea that the closer they are doesn't necessarily need to matter. It could just be the waves they give off, or the field around them. Or It's like dropping a giant rock on a rubber sheet. The sheet deforms.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, the thing that comes to mind, like you brought it up, is the Serenite, right? How many weapons did we construct out of Serenite? How many pieces of armor did we construct out of Serenite?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many helmets did we wear?
Yeah.
How many god pieces did we put on?
And
we were daring that stuff to affect us.
Oh yeah, and let's say we left Northrend and we move on to the next thing with it. Where do our heroes keep our old armor? Where do they sit? Where do they? Presumably they would put them at home, or in an order hall or something, or
in a bank.
How many
times did you leave it in the bank? For a while it was in void storage. So I don't know, man.
But there's a chance that stuff could resonate there as well, especially if we're not there to contain it. The other thing, going just from the cultists and things that we made out of old god bits that we have just found, I feel like Pandaria sort of showed us what dead god bits could do, because they're not really dead, right? And we're seeing this again with the current expansion. If you go back and look at the Black Blood, we know that it is the blood of an old god.
Or multiple old gods.
Old gods. My bet's still on Y'Shaarj, but Y'Shaarj is...
I mean, he would certainly make the most sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Because he was supposed to be the largest, right? He was supposed to have the most landmass. He was supposed to have burrowed the deepest, the fastest. But also, Y'Shaarj is the one that they ripped out. A Titan literally plucked it out of the face of Azeroth like it was an ingrown hair. And in doing so,
it left
exploded
pieces all over the place. Yeah,
yes.
Left pieces everywhere.
And we've already thought about this. Matt has said this years ago. I said this years ago. When Anne was still on this podcast, Anne said it. There is a very good chance that those bits were not just contained there. And especially when you consider Pandaria is one place, but what was the wound caused by Y'Shaarj being ripped out of the face of Azeroth?
The Well of Eternity.
And the Well of Eternity was where?
It was right smack dab in the middle of ancient Kalimdor.
And what happened when that went kablooey?
We got the Maelstrom and the portal to Deepholm. And yeah.
And the portal is in the middle of everywhere. It's in the middle of all of the continents. It is the center focal point of our known map of Azeroth.
Mm-hmm.
There is a less than 0% chance, as far as I'm concerned, that Y'Shaarj bits didn't end up everywhere.
Well, plus, I mean, we actually know that they didn't just end up on Pandaria. I mean, again, keep in mind that we have to try to treat Chronicle like this is what the Titans said, this is what the Ethereal said.
Yeah, we have to treat it as an incomplete accounting.
Yeah, but we know that one of the reasons Ra-Den went south after, was because after they imprisoned the Titans, he noticed there was weird stuff happening down there. And that's why he left, and he ended up going to Uldum, where they activated Uldum. They used it in a limited fashion against the Zandalari, who were working with the Mogu at the time. When Ra-Den went down to figure out what was going on, Uldum got turned on. That's why Uldum, the area around Uldum, is dead. That's why there's a giant desert down there, because they turned the Halls of Origination on. Not full power, but enough to basically blast an entire region into lifelessness. And they did that because they were being driven by the old god, even though he was dead. That's why Ra-Den realized, we got to do something. We have to contain this.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he did what he did in the first place. That's why he brought, it's all connected to damage control. A lot of what the Titans did was damage control after what, what's his name? I know his name. He's the pappy of the whole Pantheon.
Oh, Aman'Thul?
Yes, thank you, Aman'Thul. When Aman'Thul decided, I'm not going to bother to talk this out. I'm not going to bother to figure out what the other Titans think I should do here. I'm just going to rip him out with my fingers. Even though we went to all this trouble of making the entire Titan Forged army because we knew we were too big and we might hurt the planet, I'm going to do it anyway. And that to me connects back to this other thing that we learned fairly recently, which is that Aman'Thul doesn't trust anybody else.
Nope.
And we saw it with A&R and her relationship with Elwynn. He didn't trust that because of nature. Oh no, that's not order. In fact, it's kind of chaotic. The whole world tree thing, I feel like there's something between or during the time where Aman'Thul ripped Y'Shaarj out of the planet that's related to his, for lack of a better word, presumption that we see in the A&R story about the first world tree. Like, they had a solution and it was working, and he kind of, who does that remind us of in terms of people who decide, I'm not going to go along with this perfectly good solution that's working on things. I'm going to just do what I want instead. Odin.
Yep.
And I think it's interesting that both Ra-Den and Odin got portions of Aman'Thul. And only Ra-Den understood what he was getting and decided, I don't want this in me, and pulled it out. So how did Odin's piece get out? Did he get out when he took his eyeball out to get his own way? See, there's a connection here. There's a lot of this stuff. I feel like there's a connection between all of it, and we haven't heard what it is yet. So I definitely think that the Titans didn't realize what the old gods could do when they were dead.
Yeah,
and we see that too in Uldir, don't we?
Yeah, well, you also have to take into consideration too the idea that the Titans thought that they could contain them too, right? So once Y'Shaarj was plucked out, and this cannot be understated, right? They built prisons around the others. These were, whether it's Alduar or whether it's the Titan facility that we find our way into that we deal with in N'Zoth, or the facility beneath the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. These Titan facilities were purpose built to contain these elements of old god bits. Even Uldir, while it is a research facility, sort of retrofitted to hold old god bits and experiment on old god bits, was purpose built for experimentation, right? These, they didn't realize that Yogg Saron could break the shackles. They didn't realize that Ahn'Qiraj would ever be breached, or that influence would ever scatter, right? Like, these are things that they never considered.
Yeah, the very fact that they made another old god, that wasn't what they were going for.
Yeah, that was an accident.
Yeah, they made Ganir out of like, just let's see what happens if we mess around with these old god bits. You create a literal living contagion. Thanks, guys. So yeah, I definitely think Joe's onto something with the whole idea that they don't even have to be alive.
And even, let's go a step further too, with one that was alive that was left unaccounted for, that is a center point for a lot of recent lore and potentially future stuff that happened in game, because again, we haven't seen the last of it. But N'Zoth, right? N'Zoth was imprisoned underneath the ocean in the waters of Azeroth. The waters of Azeroth touch literally everything. And I do mean literally everything. And we've seen that N'Zoth has presented itself as a fish multiple times, in as so recently as this expansion, and nobody will tell me otherwise. That void fish with the multiple eyes that we did air quote questing for in Hallowfall, 1000% is N'Zoth. I don't, because we didn't get rid of them, right? Like,
it feels Avatar of N'Zoth.
It does.
N'Zoth has this little bit of itself. It's got floating around over there. Sort of thing, yeah, absolutely.
And think about that. When Azshara was falling, he was already imprisoned, right? And yet was able to still offer enough power not only to juice up Azshara, but mutate her and all of her followers into creatures of his own likeness, essentially. Right?
Well, here's another way to put this too, because this goes along with this. When we went to we were doing the Cataclysm stuff, and we were eventually fighting the Twilight's Hammer in their bastion, the Bastion of Twilight. They were, both Cho and Gal were still talking to and taking orders from someone.
Yep.
Almost certainly that someone is Cthulhu, because Cthulhu is the only old god. Well, actually, that's not true. He's actually been around two of them, but Cthulhu is the old god who essentially grabbed Cho'Gall when they visited and said, "You work for me now."
Yep.
And when were fighting him, Cho'Gall's like, words, words, words. The master wants murder. He doesn't say the master wanted murder. He doesn't say murder is something. Yeah, he says wants. So what's that old thing the Void said about what is the Void fear that we were talking about last week? And one of the arguments was that it's something related with undeath and that stasis and that being out of the cycle thing.
Mm-hmm.
The old gods want to be out of the cycle.
Well, let's take it even a step more recently. Like, let's go back to lore walking with the whole Xal'atath's backstory. What does she call them?
Absolutely.
What does she?
I don't remember the exact terms. I know she's like basically like they're usurpers, or
they're failed. Parasites. They're failed parasites that are no longer servants of the void. They're essentially a pathogen. They are not void at all, right? They're enemies of the void. The old gods are.
It's like they're exiles from the void.
Yeah,
it's like they took the whole deal where they were thrown into this reality and decided, rather than attempt, what's it? There's a thing that they're called when you first find out about them at the Halls of Stone and Halls of Lightning. There's something that they're called necrophotic parasitic organisms. I think that's what they're called, right?
Yeah, I think that's, if not, it's close enough for government work.
Necrophotic means Death Eater.
Okay.
Now think about what that would mean. If they're Death Eaters, that doesn't mean they're eating like the anima of the Shadowlands. It might literally mean that they're killing, they're eating death. They use death as a substitute for the void. They kill things, they twist things, they bend things. We've said before how they can't create anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about this. The old gods don't make anything. They twist things. But the void is all about possibilities. If they were void entities still, if they were still linked to the void, they'd have all the possibilities, right? But by existing in our universe, they're not possibilities anymore. They're actualities. And that takes them, they are no longer part of the void. That means they are no longer part of the cycle. They're in a weird sort of way, when Yogg-Saron told us he was the god of death, I think he meant it. And it's not death as in the cycle of life and death that we see with the Shadowlands and the entities therein. It's the cessation of it. If that makes any sense. They wanted things to stop at them. They don't want things to get out of this reality and continue on the anima cycle. They want it to stop at them. They want to eat it. And think about what Saronite did, what it allowed the jailer to do, because the jailer was the one working through it. It wasn't, it was the jailer's idea to use it. Where did he get that idea? Why did he decide to do that? And we know the jailer had Odin's eye. Odin had seen them up close. Odin had fought them and their armies. And what was their army primarily composed of? Bloated abominations birthed from the weird husk things they formed when they slammed into Azeroth, and elementals enslaved to their will. Dominated beings. Possibly the Cipher of Damnation used to control them in a very similar way to domination magic. Where did the old gods get domination magic?
Yeah, all good points.
There's a lot to the old gods we don't really know. I feel like we're not saying that they aren't from the void. We're not saying that they weren't born from the void, but lots of things are born from something but aren't that thing. I think we actually see that with the Naru, who I think are much more like what you would expect to see from a true void being when they go into their void form. That's a void being. You look at it and go, yeah, okay, that's the void. Dementius. When Dementius is rampaging around, you're like, oh, absolutely, that's the void. When you look at Yogg-Saron, is your first thought the void?
No.
Or is it, wow, that's a lot of mouths. Like, geez, he's got a lot of mouths for eyes. I think it all comes back to like that weird deformation of everything that they do. The way I don't even necessarily think that the races that they quote unquote create are deliberately created. I don't think they decided to make the Chithraxi, the Naraki, and the Nerubians. I think those things just happened because there's an old god there.
Yeah, just being around it, right? Like it's not an intentional perversion of anything. It's just
they are just perversions. They are perversions.
It is like a chaotic effect of just being around them.
You stand around a nuclear reactor, the reactor isn't deliberately turning you and giving you cancer. It's just hitting you with radiation, which gives you cancer. It's not a thought process.
And one last thing that I want to just bring up too is another point of we don't fully understand them, their influence, their power, or what they could have done, is going back also to Deathwing and bringing that up as a case in point. Because
absolutely.
Deathwing heard the whispers through the earth, but technically, if we're going with who we think was the one influencing them, because I don't think really anybody, like they all can claim it, but I don't know if we definitively know which one, but all of them would have been so far away from where he actually was that it's really difficult to say, yeah, he was next door, that's why, or he was sitting in the prison, that's why.
Yeah, I think distance is unimportant here.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think in the case of Deathwing, the fact that they were buried in the earth gave the earth resonance. It was the place they were trapped. It was the element that was holding them, and therefore, since it was holding them, it was touching them. Like this is not physical. This is metaphysical. These are the
Well,
contact we're
just look at the
talking about
nightmare.
is yes, exactly. Or what you just said about N'Zoth. N'Zoth was chained under the ocean, therefore the ocean was where he was. He could still reach out and touch things. Cthulhu could enslave Cho'Gall despite being trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Yogg-Saron was spreading out all over. Yogg-Saron not only got Loken to work for him, look at what happened to the other Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
All over Northrend, Yogg-Saron was doing stuff despite the fact that he was still locked up. He doesn't get the last shackle broken until we come down. There's a crazy amount, and think about this. Of the ones we've met, like Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron, we've met directly and interacted with. They both were doing stuff while they were imprisoned. N'Zoth had been imprisoned this whole time, and he still created the Naga, as you pointed out. Yashraj is dead, and he still managed to do all sorts of horrible stuff after he died. And I will even point out that he was so powerful that the Emperor could use his power to shield Pandaria from the Legion. Because that's what the mists were. The mists surrounding Pandaria were directly linked to the Shah and their emotional twisting. That's why they couldn't get rid of them. As long as Yashraj's essence was there, the island was shrouded. That was the Emperor deliberately making use of their power. And we note that their power was still great enough to create the Timeless Isles. And the Timeless Isles, where have we seen that before? We saw a very similar effect when Nosdormu and the the Bronze Dragonflight were under attack in the novel trilogy that basically, displayed the whole War of the Ancients to us. Remember the old gods attacked Nosdormu, and we never, there's no real which one was doing it. We still don't know who was attacking Nosdormu. So, yeah, it almost feels like acting like the old gods are separate beings is the mistake.
Yeah, and attributing their influence to
deliberate planning,
I think, is also a mistake, right? It's just one of those things. And I don't want to beleaguer the point, but I don't know either that there's necessarily a whole lot of influence that needs to be given over people like the kobolds, the gnolls, the Defias, because they don't really need to be pushed in one direction or another.
Well, yeah, plus with the Defias, I mean, the Defias had perfectly good, tangible, earthly reasons to be upset. The whole, they got gouged by the nobles of Stormwind. They ended up in a place where they didn't have any money or food. And there's not, I'm not saying there isn't an old god influence in this. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be the primary reason people do stuff.
Yeah.
Kobolds got plenty of reasons to be mad.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you look at we just did the waxworks and everything and going through that whole section of this current expansion, kobolds have a much more complex society than we anticipated, and what we see is barely it's like the iceberg thing all over again. We barely see the top of what they are and who they are as a people.
Imagine, yeah, absolutely. Imagine if an alien showed up and the only thing they knew about Earth was, well, we landed in this one place that's this is an island that's got 300 of them, and they're all crazy.
Yep.
And never once said you landed on a small island in the Ozarks. There's lots of other places.
Yeah, or the fact that Mechanomes are another weird example of being that went off the deep end, right? Did they go off the deep end
And
because it
again,
was a natural psychosis, or did they go off the deep end because they live underground and they happen to be near where an old god was, or at least bits of an old god? We know that there were strong, powerful bits of an old god in a research facility not too far from Mechagon. So, like,
mhm.
it is Wild West territory because, like the Void, all options are potentially true here. There is no potential, like, there everything is right, everything is wrong. And that's sort of the glory of it, because now that means, and I want to move on to the next question here in a second, but it means that anything that they decide is true. And it's infinite possibility for what the old gods are as we move further into these expansions. And if you think Midnight and the Last Titan are not going to deal with old gods at all, boy, are you wrong. Because it's got to. It has to. It doesn't have a choice.
I've got a point about Xalatath and the old gods that I would make here, except that I wanted you to get to the next question. So once you do the next question, and we'll see if I can tie it in.
Well, our next one comes from our friend Stouts here. And it says, "Hi, guys. I fell behind for a bit, so glad you're still doing strong tinfoil hatting. Always and forever, my friend. After the Void Elves getting Demon Hunters, Blizzard folks stated that there will be an imbalance and Horde would be getting a new class combo coming soon. With the great battle of the Light and Void coming to Midnight, I couldn't help but think, here come the Forsaken Paladins. After listening to your latest What Does the Void Fear, this just sealed the deal for me. Curious for thoughts. Is it time, or is there lore implications holding back the idea?" And since Matt was eager for this one, I'll turn it over.
Well, I mean, first off, I feel like it's a little mean to Joe to be throwing Forsaken Paladins at us when he's wanted Night Elf Paladins for a very long time. But I think that we could have Forsaken Paladins. I definitely think that I liked the idea from a long time ago, and he no longer works there. But one of the developers made the point that using the light essentially is cauterizing wounds for the Forsaken. It's like it'll heal you, but it heals you by burning stuff away. And we've seen that the light, when undead are hit by the light, it can annihilate them. The Ashbringer isn't the Ashbringer because, he brought some ashes along with him. He made them. Like, he made ash out of armies of the Forsaken. Scourge at the time. Sorry, not the Forsaken yet. So there is that, but I don't think the Void fears light.
No,
I think neither the Void nor the Light fear each other. They don't like each other, or they're antagonistic by nature, but in much the same way that pure sodium and water, you throw them together. I don't think either sodium or water are afraid of each other. I think they just explode. I think it's similar in that front.
But I was gonna say, but I understand where I think this is coming from a little bit, because looking at, in particular, the way that it is split up, which is the Alliance currently has what, 5-6 races that.
I've got a thing about that.
Go ahead. Go right ahead then.
I think we could get Nightborn Paladins.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar.
The Nightborn have now a cultural connection via the marriage of Lor'themar and Thalysra, which really has to come into play in Midnight. And you got to do something with that.
And we know that there are High Elf Paladins, because there's was it Rulin Light's Reap?
Yeah.
Champion Isamode are absolutely High Elf Paladins serving the Silver Covenant.
And there were High Elves who were like priests of the light, and who could have always become Paladins. It's pretty obvious that Liadrin always had the potential to be a Paladin. She just didn't know anything about fighting.
So I can see that. I can absolutely see the Nightborn be like opening themselves up to that.
Yeah, and especially since it's like, it would be much easier for them in a way to get Paladins than, say, Night Elves, just because Night Elves have a very particular way of doing the light. And I'm not saying they couldn't have Paladins. I think that they just tend to go, when they go militaristic with Elune, it's the Night Warrior. And so when they do that and embrace the Night Warrior, it's not the light of Elune they're channeling. They channel the light of Elune to heal. This doesn't mean that they couldn't become paladins. It just means they'd need to recontextualize what they're doing in a way that the Nightborn would have much less difficulty with. Because if the Nightborn still worship Elune, it's extremely limited. You don't hear a lot of Elune talk from the Nightborn. So could that happen? I don't know. I mean, I think it could. Is it going to? I have no idea. They've said nothing. I've heard nothing. But I definitely think it would be more likely than Forsaken Paladins, just because at this point, the Forsaken are a lot of people who died. And some of them were Paladins, and yet only one had retained any of that, and he wasn't Forsaken. He was a Scourge. I think it's not that they can't do it. I think they're still mad.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
There's a lot of Forsaken who are like very similar to I think a lot of Blood Elves. Like, for instance, I think Lor'themar also shares this mentality. Where was the light when we needed it? Like, if you watch that cinematic for Midnight, which I keep trying to call Twilight. Sorry, guys. Lor'themar has no patience for this talk of going to the light and asking for help. Liadrin does it. He's not down for it. He's like, what good is that going to do? He doesn't bother to even say, well, the light, he's like, that's ridiculous. Let's fight. I definitely feel like there's a lot of Forsaken who feel much the same way.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
I think, I'm not saying they couldn't do it. In fact, I'll just say right now, just for future, if anyone ever wants to know my take on this, every class should be available to everybody. It is ridiculous at this point that you don't have gnome paladins. At least one gnome has got to have said, hey, you know how we're doing the light stuff now? Why don't we stab people while we do it? I mean, there's no way. Gnomes are experimenters by nature. They got the light just by being curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no effing way you're convincing me that not one of those gnome priests wants to pick up one of them vibrating, sawtooth swords of theirs and then smite someone. I just don't believe it. So yeah, that's my take. I would love to see paladins of every single possible playable race should have every class.
And while I'm definitely in agreement with that, going back to the root of the question, if we do get Forsaken Paladins, it's not going to be Forsaken. So, I think this is what...
I know where you're going.
Yeah, and I think this is where Stouts was implying. Because we have that one big glaring... Well, actually, we have three big glaring existences that sort of defy what it is to be a Forsaken at this point. The one on everybody's mind is Kalia Menethil, because everybody's been expecting Kalia to essentially exhibit some form of the light, and at some point. We haven't seen that yet. Doesn't mean she will, but because of how she is born, what she is, and what she represents, this better way forward for the Forsaken. People are expecting that level of I don't want to say rebirth, but that the light would fill the vessel, restore the vessel, and then, they would be able to wield the light as paladins. I've seen this presented a lot of different places. I've seen this come up in many forum posts and threads and things like that. But then you also have other Forsaken that are not actually Forsaken that sort of support that they could become different flavors of Forsaken. Nathanos is another one. Now, while he is, and I'm going to air quote here, dead, there's nothing that says that he isn't coming back or doesn't represent a blueprint for it. And then Sylvanas is absolutely in that category because she's not quite dead, but she's not really alive either, and she just got her full soul back. So these three show you that a force... Go ahead.
I got one that's better than any of those.
Go for it.
Who helped create paladins on Azeroth for humans, at least, in the first place?
Oh, you're going to test me there.
Not who was the first paladins. Who came up with the idea?
Why is it going to make me lose it?
Alansis Fial.
Oh, that's right.
Who resurrected Kalia as a not Forsaken undead?
Alansis Fial.
Yep.
Yep.
Who's been spending all his time around Anaru.
Not just in the Naru, in the Crucible. He's been in the Crucible
Yep.
the entire time.
Yep.
And we were just talking
And
about using the magics to like reforge like the Valkyr did, but there's nothing that says that the Crucible couldn't do that exact same thing.
And for that matter, he's undead.
Yeah.
And we don't know how he got undead because he died way before Warcraft 3. Did he just pray himself into not dying? Did he pray himself through dying? We don't know. We know nothing about how he ended up undead or why he's wandering around doing stuff to and with the Forsaken, including creating the person that they've since put up as their ruler.
Well, yeah, like even when you introduce him, like what does he say? I'm Alonce's foul. At times I've been a leader of a church, a mindless minion of the Scourge, and a commander in a secret war, but I've always been a priest first. Like, yeah.
And he created the human order of paladins. The Order of the Silver Hand was him and the first 5.
Yeah, and the first 5 of which Uther the Lightbringer was one of.
And Turalyon was another of.
And we have Turalyon running around now, and Uther is essentially made whole again, and could come back at any point in time because things in the Shadowlands don't stay in the Shadowlands anymore. They don't have to.
Mm-hmm. So
because it was what it was Turalyon, Tyrion, Saidan, Gavernad. Yeah, okay,
yeah. So imagine that Alonce's Foul decides we need the help of the light. Who would do almost anything he said? Almost every
pretty much every one of them, yeah.
Yeah. And besides them, the Forsaken, because Kalia is like, this guy is my mentor and teacher who brought me through and made me what I am. And he knows exactly how to make paladins. He'd be perfect. If you wanted to have Forsaken Paladins in WoW, Alonce's Foul is right there.
And also the mysterious cause of his death, I'm pretty sure we've all assumed that it was Benedictus, who was, the Twilight Prophet. I mean, we're all making that assumption, but
I would assume Benedictus was behind his death. Absolutely. Yeah. He wanted to take over. And Benedictus worked for the old gods. And you'll note that Benedictus could use the light and the void
simultaneously. Yep.
He was bending both to his will, which I'm sure neither the light nor the void wanted. So keep that in mind for later too. Keep that under your hat. But yeah, I think Alonce's Foul could definitely show up and play a role. Like, I would actually love it if he created a council of types of undead, where you have the light ones, you've got the Scourge Forsaken types, maybe both for that matter. You've got Death Knights, and then you've got ones like, what's his name? The one that's Fell. He's even Fellstorm. Melon Fellstorm, right?
Yeah.
He's actually in the Mage Order Hall thing, I believe. That dude's undead since forever. Because of the Fell. He's actually a Fell undead. So there's lots of different possibilities for how we had that bit in Shadowlands near the end when Kalia, essentially stepped up and said, I'm gonna do this because nobody else is here to do it. Where they said straightforwardly, one of the necromancers in Maldraxxus said, you can use any kind of magic. The power source doesn't matter. It's what you use it to do. Like, there are specific ways to get a body moving around with something akin to its soul back in it. And the actual energy that's doing this can be anything. It can be light. It can be, shadow magic. It can be the void even. It can be anything. So yeah, I definitely feel like they should do something with that. I don't know that they will. But I'd like to see Forsaken Undead. I would. This is me saying I don't necessarily think it's the most likely. Doesn't mean I don't want it. I want it all. I am extremely greedy. When they gave us Tauren Paladin, I wasn't like, well, that's good enough. No, I want more. I want more of everything. Give me more Paladins of everything. I would absolutely love to have a freaking Naga Paladin rock up. And everyone would be like, what? Where'd this one come from? And meanwhile, the Naga Paladin's just ruining stuff with the light. I would absolutely love it. So, yeah. But yeah, imagine Nithanos comes back as a paladin, because he could have been.
Yeah.
If anybody could have been a paladin, it's the guy who was better at being a Farstrider than the Farstriders. The human ranger who was so good at rangering that elves 10 times his age were left in the dust. That guy could have been a paladin.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really argue with that. But I think we're going to move on to the next one here. And I think we have enough time for it. And this one comes from Red Bandit 1213. It didn't give me a name, so we're going to go with that one. Why is Lor'themar still a regent lord, and who is he regent for? Can't he just be a lord at this point? There's a second question, but I think we'll start with that one. I think Lor'themar flat out says it. He doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want to be lord. He doesn't want to be anything more than what he is, which is a representative of his people. A regent can be replaced easily. A king has to be deposed. And he's seen what happened with princes and kings before. He's seen what happened with somebody who thought they knew the best for their people and very clearly did not. So, yeah, it's one of those things where it's a choice. He would rather be the regent for all of his people. And that's what he is. He is a regent for the Blood Elves in a way that he represents them on the councils of all the allied functions that they attend to. He is their voice of essentially in the greater world. You've seen it multiple times. He's the one that met with the first Arcanist before they were even a thing. Now they're married. That's a whole, that's a thing too. When there was the Council of the Horde, he sat on the Council of the Horde, giving voice to his people and their concerns. And that's an important role. And then when he goes back, he doesn't have to worry about, people serving him or, fawning over him or doing whatever. He just gets to help his people the best that he can. And I think that is really important. Do you have an opinion on that, Matt?
Well, I agree with everything you just said. And I also think to a certain degree, Lor'themar took the betrayal of the Sunstriders' heir really hard.
Oh, yeah.
When Kael'thas betrayed his people, keep in mind, up until that point, up until he actually teleported into Quel'Thalas and grabbed the Naru, he had no signs that Kael'thas was corrupt or, Kael'thas was the one who sent the Naru. Kael'thas even sent, what's his name? The elf mage who looks like he's an extra from Bleach. I can't remember his name. I feel bad because he's actually a really cool character. But he sent them back with the Naru. They gave the power to Liadrin. That was, this was all Kael'thas's idea. And then suddenly he just pops in Ramath, wasn't that his name?
Ramath, yeah.
Yeah, Ramath. He pops in, steals the Naru, kills some of his own people doing it, and pops out. And it's like this total betrayal. Up until that point, Lor'themar still thought of Kael'thas as the rightful king of their people. And keep in mind that point is more than halfway through Burning Crusade. Mm-hmm. Up until this point, the only contact he'd had was Ramath showing up and saying, Kael'thas sends this to help our people. We can create this order of like the paladins that the other people have. And, this is his sign of his caring. And, Lor'themar's like, I'm so glad that he still cares about us. I'm so glad that he's still reaching out. Up until that point, he didn't think of himself as leader of the Blood Elves. He thought of himself as a regent. Whilst the king in question, even if he wasn't calling himself the Sun King, was out there working to save his people. And then everything falls apart. And in that moment, I don't think that Lor'themar doesn't know he could step up. As Joe pointed out, he doesn't want to be king. I think he actually feels like kings are a bad idea.
Yeah, kings are a mistake.
Yeah. Like he served, we don't know how old Lor'themar is.
He was there when they left, wasn't he? He was there when the Blood Elves split, wasn't he?
Lor'themar? No, I mean, that's going back a bit. That's Dathramar time, and that's a long time ago. Anasterion was Dathramar's son, and Anasterion was on the throne for like several thousand years.
Mm.
The Blood Elves live longer, but they're not immortal. I think it's unlikely Lor'themar was there when they left, but I definitely think Lor'themar is probably easily 1,000 years older than Kael'thas. I think he served under Anasterion. I think he saw Anasterion get destroyed by the roll because Anasterion absolutely did.
Yeah, Lor'themar, Theron, and Leandrin are thought to be around 3,000 years old.
So yeah, they would both be like right in the middle of Anasterian's reign. So they would have seen the end of it. So in fact, since they're that old, they would have seen the very beginning of human mages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's when the Mage Wars happened. So they would have been children during the Mage Wars. They would have seen Anasterion feel forced to give the humans magic. He would have seen the humans essentially extort a promise out of Anasterion that if the descendants of the Arathi rulership ever came back, he'd actually obey their summons, which was to Anasterion a massive humiliation. It was, and they would have, lived through all that. They would have watched him. They would have seen him at the end of his reign so broken that when he answered the call, it was the hugest weight off of his mind, and he basically began preparing to die. Like he was trying to get Kael'thas ready to rule. So yeah, I think to Lor'themar, this whole experiment with monarchy, it wasn't a night elf thing anymore, because what had happened just before Lor'themar's life, what had happened with the rulership of the night elves again? The Kaldorei? Oh, right. Queen Ashara decided that the killing off 9/10 of the elves was perfectly acceptable.
Not only that, but also she decided that blowing up the world was an acceptable side,
Yeah, if I get to be God Queen, I don't care what happens to like 9/10 of us or 99 out of 100 of us. I'll be fine. And from that, Anasterion, Dathramar became the ruler. Anasterion became king after him, and neither of them had happy lives. And then Kael'thas just goes and does this. No, we don't need this anymore. And I think that to a certain degree, holding on to the title Regent Lord doesn't just mean that he can be replaced. It means who he's regent for is everybody else. He is their regent. They rule. And he serves at their pleasure. It's a way to basically make himself president without calling himself president, because they don't really have that word. I mean, nobody calls themselves the president in fantasy. It just doesn't happen. That's me being a little cynical, but in all honesty, I feel like it is a way of him, essentially, his embracing of every of these councils that pops up, his reaching out to other people. It's very much a sense that he doesn't think, and for that matter, look at his relationship with Sylvanas. He loved Sylvanas. Not like, I'm not saying like a girlfriend or anything, but he did. He served under her.
Mm-hmm.
He thought she was, she hung the moon. Like him and Haldoran were like Sylvanas' left and right hand. Look what happened to her when she became a queen. Being a monarch sucks. He doesn't want the job. He doesn't think it's good for people. He saw every hero and idol he had get destroyed by it. So yeah, I think he doesn't ever want to be a king. If Lor'themar wanted, he could walk up to the Blood Elves right now and say, "Hey, I'm King Lor'themar now," and they would enthusiastically support him. And he knows it. He's fully aware. He is so confident that whilst remaining a member of the Horde, he was willing to talk to the Alliance, and even talk about possibly rejoining it. He is fully aware of how important he is, and that's the problem. He is never going to make that step. He is never going to appoint himself Lord of the Blood Elves. Doesn't want the job. Running the place is enough. He doesn't want to rule them. He wants to lead them.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good way to put it, right? Because you don't have to be a king to be a leader. And we've seen that multiple times. I mean, technically, if we want to go back to it, Anduin, sodding off to another adventure or to his, sojourn across the world, he left Turellian behind in charge of things going on with Gen Greymane doing whatever he wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah.
They led the
How
people.
many people? Yeah, how many people have led the Kingdom of Stormwind who were not its king? At this point, in the time that we've seen Stormwind, it's had more people who weren't in charge of it. I mean, who weren't its king in charge of it. I mean, going all the way back to one of the previous Lich Kings. It's been run by people who weren't king more than it's been run by kings over the past 30 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, I don't think we have enough time to get to your second question there, but I think we've answered enough today. Friends, I do want to thank you for joining us. Again, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support allows this site and community to be able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters get to enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to all of our podcasts, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or Q&A, and ads-free site experience. And again, if you have something you want us to answer, whether it's a question or if you have a topic that you want us to cover for maybe a whole themed episode of something, go ahead and send those in. Send them in at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. And Discord, you can hit us up. We have the Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is open for everybody. Same rules apply. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, we have the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel. We tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep our lights on. But with that, folks, we'll catch you next week.